Hi, I'm Rob Murray, and I want to introduce you to one of the most innovative tools developed for woodworking. It's the Hawk RouterSHOP by Hawk Woodworking Tools. Most woodworkers are familiar with the router. Chances are you already have one in your shop. It's a tool woodworkers have used for years to route simple, rounded over edges. Now, by mounting that same router in the new Hawk RouterSHOP, you've got the most versatile woodworking tool anyone could own. Whether you're a master woodworker or you're just getting started with your woodworking hobby, the Hawk RouterSHOP will open a whole new world of woodworking potential. There's no other tool like the RouterSHOP. In fact, its design is so unique, it's patented. Imagine using the RouterSHOP to perform these 7 key woodworking functions that master woodworkers use to create their handcrafted furniture projects. You can use the RouterSHOP as an edge joiner for creating flat, clean edges for glue-ups. It's also a mortise and tenon machine for creating one of the strongest and most attractive joints for case construction. Use the RouterSHOP as a door machine for a foolproof way to create all 3 key parts of a door, from the rail and style cuts to traditional raised panels, all with one $18 router bit. No expensive bits to purchase. The RouterSHOP is also a molder. You can create decorative moldings for your home, such as a fireplace mantle. Use the same bit and change the angle to create one-of-a-kind designs. Convert the RouterSHOP to become a shaper. Use it for shaping decorative edges with a router and bits instead of expensive shaper cutters. The RouterSHOP is also a dovetailing machine. The dovetail is one of the strongest construction joints for drawers, and it's the hallmark of good craftsmanship. We'll show you how to create a unique sliding dovetail in seconds. You can also take advantage of the RouterSHOP's unique horizontal cutting ability as a doweling machine. Using dowels to increase the strength of a joint is one of the most traditional ways woodworkers have built heirloom quality projects for generations. Now you can discover the secret the pros use. Well, to purchase these machines for your shop, you'd spend a fortune. In fact, most of these tools aren't even available for woodworking hobbyists. They're designed for the giant commercial shops that cost thousands of dollars each. The good news is it doesn't take decades of experience or thousands of dollars worth of equipment to create projects like a pro. The new way to create quality woodworking projects is with the RouterSHOP. The best way to see just how different the RouterSHOP is than a traditional router table is to see it building a project. Right away, you'll notice how this one tool in your shop will increase the accuracy in your project building. The tool has its own brain. It measures for you. It'll give you the confidence to tackle projects you would have never taken on before and give all of your projects a more professional look. At first glance, some folks have thought the RouterSHOP was just another router table. That's only a small part of what this machine can do. If the RouterSHOP were just a router table, hands down, it would be the best there is. Right now, Mark is going to join me with his router table. That way you'll see firsthand the difference between the Hawk RouterSHOP and a traditional router table. We'll start with the mortise and tenon joint. First, Mark has to set his fence by tapping it back and forth, using his scale to try to set the depth of cut and the position of his project. As you probably already know, this is really frustrating. Mark's having a hard time trying to figure out how to measure to the center of a bit and then make his cut correctly. This leads to a lot of trial and error, a lot of wasted cuts, and it's still not correct. Take a look at the mismatched face of the joint. This is going to require a lot of hand sanding. Now, let's head over here and show you just how the Hawk RouterSHOP will change the way you'll build your woodworking projects forever. There are two key features of the RouterSHOP that make it so easy to use. To complete the same mortise and tenon joint, we're going to use both of them. You won't believe how these two differences will change the way you do woodworking. First, I have complete control of the cutter position with the crossbeam adjustment on the RouterSHOP. For the first time, I can control the cutter's position exactly where I want it, and the fence is stationary. It's set square and it stays there. I move the cutter forward or backward by turning this handle. You can control the cross-feed movement of the cutter in increments as small as 1/64 of an inch. Second is the patented split table design. The table is split in the middle so you can orient your cutter either horizontally or vertically. You decide the easiest and safest way you want the cutter to run. For instance, when I make these mortise and tenon joints, I want the support of the entire table to keep my project square. And I want the cutter position to be exactly in position. I'll do that by using the calibrated crossbeam. It's a safer and more accurate way to make this joint. Now this is where the brains of the RouterSHOP really kick in. This tool will automatically keep track of all the important calculations you need to complete a perfect fitting mortise and tenon. Let's start by making our tenon first. First, we'll lay out where the joint should be on our workpiece. Now always put your pencil mark on the back of your project. We'll keep the good side of our workpiece face down, and you're going to see just how important this is later. Our tenon should be 1/3 the thickness of our material. We're using 3/4 of an inch material, so in this case, we'll make our tenon 1/4 of an inch thick. Okay, now that we've got our tenon piece marked, we'll set the bit at 0 depth of cut and then get started. We'll raise our cutter 1/4 of an inch from the face of our project. That's 4 turns of the handle. Remember, we're always referencing from the face of our project. Now, we want our tenon to be 1/4 of an inch thick and a final cut of 1/4 of an inch. So we'll turn the handle 4 turns for the thickness of the tenon and 4 turns for the remaining material we want to remove. Finally, we'll make the shoulder cuts. Let's make our shoulders 1/8 of an inch on both sides. We'll lower the crossbeam to 0 and raise the cutter 2 turns. Remember, that's 1/8 of an inch. There's no time-consuming measuring, no tedious dimensions to forget, and no clumsy jigs or fixtures. If you can count, you can use the Hawk RouterSHOP. The matching mortise is even easier. We set our cutter at 0. Now we'll bring it up 8 turns. That's exactly where the tenon is on the other workpiece. Let's make the cut. Here's our perfect fitting mortise and tenon joint. For our project, the entire case will be made using the mortise and tenon joint. It's a very strong joint and ideal for this type of application. Let me show you something you may not have noticed while we were making our joint. Remember, we always use the face of our workpiece as a reference. That, combined with the perfect flatness of the table, gives you a perfect fitting joint on the face side. Now, if the thickness of your wood isn't perfectly uniform, the RouterSHOP will always transfer your mistake to the back of the project. Remember when Mark made his mortise and tenon joint on his standard router table? Finding the center of his workpiece for placement of the tenon and mortise left him with a mismatched joint. The RouterSHOP actually does the figuring for you, and it hides your mistakes. There you go, Mark. What do you think?
That'll definitely change the way I do projects in my shop. Learning that having the right tool is a big part of creating the kind of projects I want to build.
Let's create this fantastic armoire and show folks just how the RouterSHOP will help them create better, more accurate projects every step of the way. Now let's back up a few steps and start our project from the beginning. The first step to creating any woodworking project is preparing your lumber. To edge joint your lumber square and true. A good square match prepares your workpiece for a sound glue joint. Let me use the RouterSHOP to show you how to create a clean jointed edge for a seamless glue-up panel. You won't believe how easy this is using a plain straight router bit. It's this easy, Mark. We'll set the infeed fence about 1/16 of an inch back. If you want to remove less, you can set it back as little as a 32nd of an inch. Now, move your bit forward using the cross feed until it's in line with the left fence. Applying smooth, even pressure, pass your boards across the cutter. We're ready to glue and clamp these up. That's all there is to it. Look at these edges. If you're joining longboards, you'll love the support you get from the RouterSHOP. It's like having one of those high-dollar long bed joiners in your shop. I've even gone one step further and added infeed and outfeed rollers for good support of even the longest boards.
Rob, how is this different than a regular joiner?
The main part is that your material lays flat on the work surface, so you've got good, even support of your project the whole time you're feeding it task. Unlike a traditional joiner, which forces you to balance your workpiece on edge when feeding it across the cutter. Now let me show you how to take that extra step to ensure that the projects you build are around for generations. We're going to use the RouterSHOP as a doweling machine. By inserting dowels right at the glue joints, it strengthens the joint and prevents it from bowing and splitting. It's a technique master woodworkers use for creating large glued surfaces like tabletops and panels for doors. If you've ever tried to dowel a panel with your drill press, I bet you only tried it once. I can't get it right. The measurements have to be so precise, trying to work from a center measurement, that it never works for me. I just set myself up for hours of tedious sanding, or even worse, I have to plane the whole glue up down because it's so uneven. With the RouterSHOP, remember, we always reference off of the face of the project. So center isn't really that important. If our thickness is slightly off, or even if we miscalculate center, we just have to be consistent and our project will work perfectly. We'll start out by setting our cutter at 0. Now let's bring the cutter up to the center. That's 8 turns. Set our stops in position and feed into the bit. Snap the pieces together. If you prefer, you can also use the RouterSHOP to cut biscuits using a slot cutter bit, but I prefer the more traditional ways of creating projects. While we get our panels clamped up for drying and finish up our mortise and tenon frame, let me tell you more about the details that make the RouterSHOP by Hawk Woodworking Tools the tool you should purchase for your shop. The work surface is a generous 29 by 24 inches. It's made entirely of solid steel. It's precision ground for flatness, just like a table saw or any other professional grade tool. The RouterSHOP is the first routing system with a brain. The most frustrating part of using a router table, and where most errors happen, is trying to correctly make setups and adjustments. To adjust your cutter, you have to tap the fence. It's difficult to tap in increments. If you're like me, it's always too far. Too far in that direction, too far in the other direction, but never just right. When you use the RouterSHOP, a simple turn of the handle moves your cutter into the exact position you want it. You control the cutter in increments as small as a 64th of an inch. For the first time, you are in control of the cutter and its position. It's a reverse way to look at it, but it makes a lot of sense. There's a handy cross-feed scale on the RouterSHOP to show you the movement of the router cutter. By recording your cross-feed position, you can make repeat cuts without time-consuming setups. Just record your cross-feed reference position and bit diameter, depth of cut, and you've got the perfect recipe for a match without all the time-consuming setups. The brain remembers. Your fence system mounts squarely and automatically, so you never have to worry about your fence moving out of alignment or getting cockeyed. Let's take a look at the RouterSHOP's split fence system. It's made from durable aluminum, precision machined for squareness. The face of the fences have T-slots milled right in them, so you can mount all types of accessories like featherboards, stops, and even shop-made jigs you design yourself. The fence can easily be adjusted for different size router bit profiles. And for the ultimate in zero clearance fences, you can use the optional UHMW fence system. It completely surrounds your cutter profile with support for your workpiece. The most innovative feature of the RouterSHOP is this: the table is split. Now you have the versatility to run your router cutters in the vertical or the horizontal position. So what are the benefits? Safety, versatility of hundreds of profiles by using the same bit at different angles, and control. You let the mass rest against the table instead of balancing against your fence. The angle of the table is controlled by this easy-to-read vernier gauge, and it locks into position from 0 to 90 degrees. When it comes time to adjusting the depth of your router bit, it's simple with the RouterSHOP. You simply release the handles and pull the split table into the upright position. Then you have complete access to the router. It's right at hand, just like opening the hood on your car. Now, let's get back to our project. We used the mortise and the tenon joint to create our case. Then we joined our workpieces flat by joining and doweling the edges. Now it's time to make the doors and the drawers. Let's start with the doors. We'll make a classic raised panel door. Right about now, you'd probably expect me to get a $300 set of router bits out to make those rails and stiles and the panel cutting bit for the panel. Instead, we'll let the RouterSHOP do the work for us. We're going to create the entire door by using an $18 spiral bit instead. We'll start by creating the rails and stiles for each door. Creating the rails and stiles are like the mortise and tenon we already created. In fact, what we're doing is making a simple tongue and groove joint. You can use this joint for creating tongue and groove hardwood flooring, for paneling, and in this case, the rails and stiles for our door.
Rob, can I use the raised panel door cutter sets if I already have them?
Well, sure you can. Now we'll start creating the raised panel for the center of the door. Remember, we glued up our panel and we edge jointed it earlier. We tilt the table and begin making the bevel of our panel. Then we assemble the door. We'll clamp the door frame together and let it dry.
Is this any different than a kitchen cabinet project?
You use the same techniques. It's the project that we all plan on completing sometime. We'd use the mortise and the tenon for our case construction, the rail and the stile for our door construction, and for the drawers, we forgot the drawers. When you walk up to a piece of furniture, Mark, what do you look at first?
I like to open the drawers to see how they are put together.
Why?
Because I can tell a lot about the woodworker who built it and how much skill they had just by looking at the fit and the joints on the drawers.
What does this drawer say about the woodworker that made it?
I've never seen a drawer joint like this one. It's a dovetail, but it's not. It looks like a very strong joint though. How do you do this one?
First off, it's called a sliding dovetail, and it's always easier to show somebody something than it is to tell them. So let's get to work. We've already jointed our lumber and glued up our panels, and we cut our drawer boxes to size. Now it's time to make the sliding dovetail joint. Feed the board through using the fence. And you have a perfect socket cut for the sliding dovetail. To make the pin, adjust the height of the bit and feed the material through. Then turn it over and make the same cut on the other side. And you have a perfect fitting sliding dovetail joint. You'll use the same technique whether you're planning to build a new kitchen cabinet or an entertainment center in the family room. The techniques we'll be using here are the same ones you'll use for any case good project, including a chest of drawers, a desk, or a vanity. The attention to detail in this tool shows everywhere. Look at the optional precision miter gauge. This accessory not only helps you feed your material, but it also prevents blowout caused by the router bit. It even has detents at 0, 22.5, and 45 degrees for easy setups. It's hard to take in all the things this amazing tool can do. You remember we started out by joining our material, then we doweled the pieces to create a wide surface. We mortised and tenon our frame and completed a complete door with traditional rail and stile construction. We even made our drawers using the ultra-strong sliding dovetail. And we created our own drawer slides with the same joint.
If I wanted to buy one, what comes with the RouterSHOP?
Everything you see here. The oversized split steel table with the vernier gauge, the heavy-duty steel floor stand, the cross-feed system, the cutter adjustment system, and the universal router plate.
You mean it fits any router?
Yeah, and you'll even receive the setup jig and drilling templates for perfectly centering and mounting your router in the RouterSHOP, and a set of zero clearance inserts for the cutters. Plus, you get the aluminum precision milled fence system. You can use this special fence system as an edge joiner. It squares by squaring to the table edge, and you can mount just about any stop or jig you want to with a 1/4-20 hex head bolt. I've even added the optional UHMW zero clearance fence to mine. It's perfect when running those cutters with lots of detail to them. RouterSHOP combines 7 tools in one. It's an edge jointer, mortise and tenon machine, a door machine, molder, shaper, dovetailing machine, and a doweling machine. And it's the only tool with a brain. It remembers all your setups, so you'll save time when it comes to performing the same operation over and over again. And the RouterSHOP is the only tool that gives you complete control of the cutter. It's so unique, it's patented. With the RouterSHOP, your potentials are unlimited.